It's the Ostrom Avenue podcast, and it starts right now.
Welcome on in to another edition of the Ostrom Avenue podcast here on WAER. As always, I'm Jordan Leonard, joined by AJ Myers and Griffin Bloomstein. I'm back. Missed a week, was out on the West Coast, but you can't get rid of me just yet. Basketball season is still chugging along, although it's almost over, and thankfully so, it's almost over. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. We got a lot of lacrosse, a lot of basketball to touch on, but of course, if I'm on a podcast, we're talking about the weather to start, and the weather been interesting, guys. The last couple days, I don't mind it. I like the snow. I'd rather have snow than absolutely no snow and 10 degrees. But it's been a lot of snow the last couple days.
It has been a lot of snow. Kind of over it, to be honest. Every time I look out the window, when I wake up in the morning, more and more and more snow. Sometimes I think the university may cancel classes, but that never happens. And this happened twice this week. I got tricked by the email. They sent an email saying classes are they're going to be as scheduled as normal. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's a delay or something like that. But that is not the case.
It's the weird type of snow where it's not like hard, but it's fluffy, and then you'll walk back outside like 5 hours later and it's a different type of snow, and it's just like there's no consistency. And then the worst part is if you have a hilly sidewalk, your life has been threatened at least twice because you go to slip and then there's like almost a banana peel under you, and then you catch yourself and it's like, okay, what's going on? But last week we weren't really sure what to talk about, the weather or Chipotle. We started with a long Chipotle session. We talked about our favorite wars.
Yeah, you missed it.
That's ridiculous out of you guys. That is highly ridiculous, because everybody knows me. I am the #1 supporter of Chipotle on this campus.
And I said it. I was like, Griffin, in all my time doing the podcast with Jordan, I don't think we've ever talked about what we get at Chipotle. And me and Griff went back and forth on what we get in our bowl. So now I think it's only fair for you, Jordan, to tell us what you get in your bowl or burrito.
I'm so disappointed right now. I missed this conversation in the heat of the moment. I get a bowl. with brown rice, pinto beans, chicken, queso, and some cheese. And then I usually either get chips or a drink or something like that. I get the double cheese. I'm a big cheese fan, so I get the queso and the cheese at the same time. But Griffin, you mentioned it's called powder, not fluffy snow. It's called powder. But speaking of, we were talking about might go get some Chipotle for dinner after we record this podcast. We're recording it during the Syracuse women's basketball game against North Carolina. They're currently trailing by 11 in the third quarter. But talk about the snow. There's this funny story. So I was in California, Miami, California, following the men's basketball team and the women's basketball team out there west. We get back, and one of our WAER sports staff members, who remain nameless, but parked his car at the airport. It snowed 2 feet basically since the Wednesday when he parked it there. And let's just say that car was parked outside and it was 2-wheel drive. And I was like, you ain't getting your car out, my guy.
Get a shovel.
Get a shovel and have somebody push him from the back of that car, because you ain't getting that thing out. And then as we speak right now, we got back on Monday. I'm pretty sure the car is still in the parking lot at Syracuse International Hancock Airport. So he's racking up the $11, I think, a day for that secondary side lot. And it's unfortunate for him, but he made the mistake of driving a 2-wheel drive car and parking at the airport when he got 1.5 feet snow in projection. It didn't snow at Maryland on Saturday for Syracuse men's lacrosse, but it was very rainy and on the colder side at CQ or SECU, however they want to pronounce it, SECU Stadium. Syracuse fell to then ranked number 6 Maryland 11-7. And AJ, it was really close in the first half. Syracuse looked pretty good, and then the second half was all Terps.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't in the script for Syracuse men's lacrosse. It was supposed to be the season where they win a lot of games, they go to the national championship, all that talk, and I think this was a good wake-up call. I almost feel like maybe no loss is a good loss, but maybe this is kind of a reality check loss that Gary Gates' group isn't where maybe they think they are, or maybe where the public thinks they are, as this presumed team that is going to the Final Four or something like this. Thought it was really interesting in that second half, the offense. That offense that looked so good in those first 3 games really just fell asleep. And it only scored twice that entire second half. Can't remember the last time that happened, period, under Gary Gates. So only getting those 2 goals in the second half. Maryland changed up their defense a little. I think that halted the team as well. So definitely a wake up call, definitely a reality check. Not the end of the world. The loss is a loss. You lost to Maryland last season as well. This is a good Terrapins team, and they showed it on last weekend.
Logan McNaney, the goalkeeper for the Terps, I mean, he must love to play against Syracuse or something. I mean, when in both this game and the game last season, he was been lights out. You don't often see Syracuse held to under 10 goals, and for that to happen is pretty remarkable. You have to give a lot of credit to him. And then I'm just looking at Michael Leo. We've mentioned it. Michael Leo could be an X factor on this team, the sneaky All-American. But this is the second game where he's had 0 points against Maryland and against Vermont. And when he's hot, he's hot. He had 4 points against Towson, 5 against Jacksonville. But if the offense as a whole isn't clicking on all cylinders, you start to think, and you right away the blame's going to be put on Joey Spallini. He had 4 points on 7 goals, and probably still like the offense runs around Joey. So you would still like if the offense is struggling, some of it's going to go on him. But I'm still looking at other guys, Michael Leo to step up for Syracuse.
Yeah, I think when kind of following this game, I mean, Jimmy McCool had a really good game too. He had 12 saves. You mentioned Logan McNaney, underrated player in college lacrosse, if not the best goalkeeper in the country. I mean, the Princeton goalie had 22 saves on 32 shots against Penn State, so that was pretty good. But I mean, Logan McNaney was on the national championship winning squad a couple of years ago, then tears his ACL in the first game of the year, misses that Syracuse game a couple of years ago. He's been in college lacrosse for forever, so he's still one of those really good goalies. And yeah, I mean, I think this loss was definitely needed to fuel the rest of the season for Syracuse. Like, I don't think, there's never a good loss, but I think at this moment of time in the season was a good loss for Syracuse. They can recollect themselves. They got Harvard this weekend, who was ranked, but they lost to Colgate earlier this week. They got a trip out to Utah. Then they got a bunch of ACC games left and a trip, game against Cornell. And this loss came at a really good time where they can now recollect themselves over a week, prepare for Harvard. But like you mentioned, I think the only concerning thing was it's now always, not always, but most times when they lose or, they end up getting controlled in a game, it's when the offense struggles. The defense, the last 2 years, has been able to hold itself against pretty much anybody in the country. It's when the offense struggles on a consistent basis, whether it's for a quarter or for a half, is where Syracuse has its biggest problems.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That is the clear issue for this team is that when that offense begins to stall or isn't firing on all cylinders, it's almost like they don't know where to go at times. And that's something that Gary Gates going to have to figure out. And again, it's still early in the season. You got a lot of games to figure that out. This also wasn't a conference loss either. So it's hurting that ACC record either.
If Syracuse was going to lose a game like this, I'd much rather have it be in the beginning of the seasons. That way you still have plenty of time to catch momentum and later in the season go into whether it's the ACC tournament or the NCAA tournament hot with momentum. And this game got chippy, and I like to see that out of Syracuse in a game where things might not be going your way. Just show some fight. And Billy Dwan was leading the way in that category, showing some toughness. And so I think it's important for Syracuse to just accept this loss, but then flush it down the toilet and realize how you can move on and not play like this for the rest of the season.
Syracuse's drought against Maryland continued on Saturday. Lou lost 11-7. The Orange back in action, though, on Saturday, February 22nd, taking on number 15 Harvard. Won't be number 15 at the end of the week, no matter what, because they lost to Colgate early on Tuesday. But that should be a good game with the Crimson inside the dome. And that's before a trip out to Utah. Utah, a team that almost beat a top 10 Denver team in the snow last week and has been receiving votes pretty much the entire season. So it will be a good way to see how can Gary Gates' squad rebound from a loss against Maryland. And, Syracuse men's basketball hasn't really been rebounding against after losses too much. The last stretch of games, it's been tough sledding for Syracuse men's basketball. They're 3-4 in their last. They've lost 4 of their last 5. I didn't scroll down far enough for the Pitt game, and that includes a 3 overtime win against Boston College. That was one of the most ugly wins I think I've ever seen in my life. And the latest games, an 88-82 loss to North Carolina, an 80-69 loss to Pittsburgh. I didn't watch too much of the North Carolina game while I was in San Francisco, but I've heard that Kyle Cuff took a 3-pointer with about 30 seconds left, and it was a bad shot. But the Pittsburgh game, I mean, Syracuse is up 16, and they just Syracused this season. You can call it Syracusing because the defense, another game giving up 80 points, AJ, they're just not going to get the job done.
Yeah, and that first half looked so good. The ball movement was really well. I mean, this team was firing on all cylinders. It was almost like, where has this been all season long? And then even watching that first half, I just was like, yeah, this isn't over. Like they got a whole other half to play. And even towards the end of that first half, you could kind of see it happening. Team was just slowing down. Their defensive intensity was slowing down. I think Pitt had a real rough opening 5 minutes. Once they figured things out, the Orange had no answer, and it was just typical Syracuse. One bright spot, I mean, Chris Bell is probably playing his best basketball of the year. He had 23 points, which is nice. I think it helped them a lot. But again, similar to that Miami game, he didn't get the points when he needed to in that second half when they were kind of, railing for someone to find some
He
kind
got a
of
3 to hit the over, though.
yeah. Yeah, that's all that really matters at this point in the season, maybe. But he just didn't do enough. And I thought JJ Starling was too quiet again. I just remember that Georgia Tech game. He had such a great game, Starling. And it seems like since that game, he's just failed to replicate a performance like that. And this team really needs it. Lampkin struggled as well. Everywhere you look, there was someone that struggled or someone who had an off night other than Chris Bell, I think you could say. And really, it's just not enough. And it just kind of shows the season and how off the tracks it's gone.
We talked about it. How long would it take Chris Bell to get going? And well, I guess it took like 20 games or something. But sneaky, his 3-point percentage is up to 36%,
Yeah.
which has kind of come out of nowhere and a shocking fact. Maybe a little fraudulent. But the point is, Syracuse started 9-0. 9-0, 5 minutes into the game. Pitt did not have a bucket.
22-6.
Yeah, I mean, so how do you lose? And it just perfectly sums up
Defense.
Syracuse season. It's defense. Syracuse has allowed 80 points for 5 straight games, which hasn't happened since, I was going to make a reference about 20 years before any of us were even born, the 80s. So, I mean, obviously the offense hasn't played great. The defense hasn't been played great. It's just the Syracuse season. It's only the second losing season since the 1970s. And the first one was just 3 years ago, the last season under Boeheim. So this is the Syracuse program, unfortunately. It's going to be a long off season, and I'm looking forward to it.
You're looking forward to the offseason? Man,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's the only intriguing thing that's left for the Syracuse men's basketball team. I mean, just think about what you just said, Griffin. The second losing season in the last 4 years, and I've seen both of them,
Yeah.
and that's never happened in like 60 years before that. It's so depressing for Syracuse basketball, in my opinion. You talk about the defense. I mean, the second half against Pittsburgh, they gave up 46 points. Like, you're not going to win a game when you're giving up almost 50 points and a half. That's just not going to get it done. I mean, like AJ said, Chris Bell had a really good game on offense, but might have had the worst defensive sequence I think I've ever seen out of a guard guarding another guard. I mean, what's his first name? Brandon Cummings. I mean, just on the right wing, a simple crossover, just like took his ankles, drives down the lane, and then Naheem McLeod helps. Of course, he helps
Yeah.
late, then goes into him with the body, doesn't block it because he doesn't know how to block shots, and he gets the and one opportunity, and Naheem puts his hands up like, "What did I do? You went into him with the body, bro." Like that is actually one of the most annoying things about basketball players is like they don't understand that when you go into somebody with your body, that's a foul. Like, come on, guys, read the handbook a little bit. But yeah, the defense has been horrible, and I think the one of the bigger things that's annoyed me a little bit over the last couple games, and maybe I'm the only one here, but Adrian Autry just keeps saying the same thing. And there's just like, and I'm not saying he's not passionate about this team. He is absolutely passionate about winning and this team and Syracuse University. But it just feels like he's not showing any of that enough in the post game. Like, I mean, he showed it against Miami, and like I could tell he was pissed when I was in that post game presser. But like, give us some substance. Like, what? And he just like, we're not playing well on defense. Yeah, no crap. Like what is like? How can we fix this? Or like, how pissed are you? Like, show me emotion that I can get behind, please.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Jordan. I think he's kind of run out of ideas too. I don't think he really knows how to fix this team. I think he kind of realizes that the team that was assembled for him, or if he assembled it, or whoever was the leading assembler of this roster, just didn't get it right. It just isn't the right pieces together. He missed on all those transfers. Thought it was interesting. Syracuse's assistant coach, Alan Griffin, he said that they're a Kyle McCord away from something, and I think that kind of shows that what they tried to do in this off season, before the season started, they tried to really bank on these transfers panning out well, and all of them really. I mean, Lampkin, I guess, has, but I don't think he was really put in the best spot. I think if he had a natural point guard, he would thrive much better, and if he had guys that could knock down shots, Chris Bell's kind of done that, but he doesn't have enough of those guys to help facilitate the ball more. But that, I think, just kind of shows that, Autry, the group just wasn't meant to succeed. And Autry, I think he's not going to come out and say that, but I think if he could, he would.
Yeah, I mean, it's at this point of the season, what more can he do? There's 4 games left in the regular season, and potentially you get one more. It looks like Syracuse will make the ACC tournament and get.
We'll see.
I
mean, there's a path where they don't. There's a legit path. If they lose out, NC State legitimately can hop them, because all they would have to do is NC State would have to get their first road win of the season at the Dome next Wednesday. So,
possible.
But if they do, they play Miami in that last game of the regular season. And if Syracuse loses the next 4 and NC State does that, Syracuse is not even going to Charlotte, which I actually low-key would be happy about. Low-key. Low-key. I don't know about you, Griff.
Goes on an NC State run of last year. I mean, NC State was in just as bad as a spot.
No, they were not.
Eddie Lampkin's not DJ Burns.
Ending the season on a 4-game losing streak.
JJ might be comparable to DJ Horn, but he's not. I mean, I don't even know who fits the O'Connell role on last year's team I guess Chris Bell, but O'Connell plays like 97 percentile defense compared to Chris Bell. At least they're getting a bye to their bye right now, so they can take a break and kind of regroup a little bit before the last 4-game stretch. But funny enough, there are winnable games. I mean, NC State, bottom 3, Virginia Tech, I mean, one of the worst offensive performances I think I've ever seen at Boston College. They scored 11 points in the first half, and I think they finished with 33. And Boston College is not good. Like, they're not – like, Syracuse beat them twice.
Yeah.
Syracuse beat them twice. And Virginia has also been booty this year. Excuse me for lack of better term. But they've been bad this season. So I mean, there's winnable games, but you never know. I find it interesting, and maybe this way we could talk a little bit about like what they need in the transfer portal. Like Alan Griffin saying that they're a Kyle McCord away. Whoa,
you need a Rondé Gadsden and Jackson Meeks there too.
But listen to this theoretically though. Kyle McCord, the leading passer in college football this past season. Oh, you're a leading scorer in college basketball away from having no crap. Like, if you had Cooper Flagg, you'd be a good team. Absolutely, you would.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
That isn't an apples to oranges comparison.
I mean, like, gosh. I think one of the downfalls of the offense, like you said, Eddie Lampkin's been really good. I mean, going before last night, Tuesday night, he had 9 of his last 12 games of a double-double. I mean, that's as much as you can expect from Eddie Lampkin. I think when you just look at it, the reason you got Jaquan Carlos is to distribute the ball, but you didn't have enough shooters. Like, JJ is not a three-point shooter. Chris Bell has been bad. Elijah Moore has never gotten going, really. I mean, he missed the game again on Tuesday. You don't have enough shooters for Jaquan to really do his role. I think, him being a all-conference defensive player at Hofstra, sure. Yeah. Now he's guarding 6'4" point guards on a daily basis. He's not an all ACC defensive player. And the JJ injury definitely hurt. Don't get me wrong. But, you're counting on Lucas Taylor being, like, the third leading scorer. And, like, there's a reason he's at Georgia State. I don't care how good he was at Georgia State. There's a reason he's at Georgia State. They're just relying on a lot of guys to take a big step up. And, in a season where maybe 2 of them do, they're mid and they're 500. But when none of them do, that's when you have a season like you are right now.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more with everything you said. And really, I think the injuries too, I know they kind of got hurt with injuries last year at times, a little bit, maybe not as much as this year. I don't know what Donnie Freeman would have done differently, because there was nothing I saw from Donnie Freeman prior to his injury that showed that he could single-handedly win games for this team. I thought when J.J. Starling came back, I just remember that Georgia Tech game. He single-handedly won them that game. He hasn't been able to replicate that. And that just isn't the kind of player he is, maybe. Maybe that's something else his team learned this year. But, Griffin, you keep saying you're excited about this offseason. There's a lot. I mean, if I'm Adrian Archer, I have a headache because you need to rebuild again. You
Well,
thought
this
last season was a
season,
rebuild. Now you need to do it again.
yeah, luckily he has a GM this year. I mean,
Yes.
Alex Klein was hired in October, when Syracuse had already had its transfers. So he has a GM working around the clock, hopefully, to recruit players in high school. Obviously, they have four guys coming in and a transfer class that hopefully Syracuse is not tampering in the portal right now, and they'll wait till the guys officially jump in, which is sooner than you probably think. I think once season ends,
Once the regular
players can
season, yeah.
yeah, players can hop in the portal. So I'm looking forward. Obviously, a center is needed, at least one, if not two.
No, you need two. I mean, like
Yeah,
Naheem's out of eligibility and Eddie's gone too, so you're gonna need two.
Jair Davis is gone. Donnie's probably gone. You big men. All right, there's at least three spots there needed, and then a point guard. Who knows? It also like who knows who's coming back. Like you could
Yeah.
generally have two players from this roster come back, and that's it. It could be that.
Yeah,
It could be Peter Majstorovic and
Elijah Moore.
Kyle
Elijah Moore
Koff
Yeah.
or Kyle
or
Cove, yeah.
Elijah Moore. Like you have no idea what is going on with this roster, and the next 2 months are going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be intriguing. You got Alex Klein, the new GM. You got my guy Eugene. I was in sport analytics class with him in college back in the day. Now he's working for Syracuse full time. So we'll see what the numbers are crunching. Syracuse men's basketball, they're going to have to make the NCAA tournament next year, most likely, if Adrian Autry wants to extend his stint as head coach, most likely. But we'll wait and see. On the women's side, they come back from a week out to California, 2 losses. Tough loss to Stanford, I will say, on Thursday. They did not get off to a really good start. And then, a really good effort, I'll say, against Cal. A good Cal team on the road. They put in a really good effort. They lost by 6, but the game was really close on the stretch. They had plenty of chances to win. Right now, they're losing by 10 in the fourth quarter to a top 10 North Carolina team. But, as much as the men's team has been frustrating to watch, women's team, also not very good. I will say I do enjoy watching. The women's team is playing hard. Not saying the men's team isn't, but they're just more enjoyable of a listen, the effort, and they're competitive almost in every game for the most part.
Yeah, I think the brand of basketball they're playing is much more
Yeah,
appealing.
that's a better word.
Is much more appealing. They have players who can create offense. I've really liked watch. I know Sophie Burrows isn't having a great game as we speak right now, but I think every game I've watched, she keeps getting better and better. I think Georgia Woolley's done everything she can this season. I don't think people are like, oh, she's got to fill into this star level role. I don't think that was really ever something she was going to get. But I have trust also in Coach Jack. I think she can guide this ship. And this was always going to be a tougher year with the losses you dealt with last season, but I still think they played well. And you have to remember the ACC for women's basketball, totally different story compared to the men's conference. I mean, the women's conference is loaded. So every game in the ACC is tough, and they got 2 tough ones right now against North Carolina and then Duke over the weekend.
Shout out Syracuse living from the 3-point line right now. 9 for 15 from deep, but which is well over 50%, but they're shooting 40% from the field. So our Jordan's philosophy for this team was pound the paint, and Syracuse not been doing a good job there, but it's an 8-point game against a top 10 team. Can't complain again about that too much. Shout out Olivia Schmidt for having 3 threes, and which hey, not more you could ask for Syracuse against a top 10 team in the country. And schedule only gets harder from there as Duke is another powerhouse top 15 team in the country on the road on Sunday. Won't be easy.
Yeah, we'll see if they make the ACC tournament. You mentioned Olivia Schmidt. She's been great the last 3 games. She hadn't scored in ACC play going into the Stanford game. Hit a 3, then hit 2 threes, I believe, on Sunday, and now shooting well again. She's just a freshman, so she's one of the future of the program. We think, you never know with the transfer portal nowadays. You thought Alyssa Latham was going to be a future of the program. Now she's at Tennessee getting bench minutes. Although I think she started a couple games here and there too, but you never know with these teams. That's the world of the transfer portal. That's what kind of sucks. You can't latch on to some of these players for too long before they end up leaving. We'll keep you updated. Potentially, this basketball game might end by the time we finish the podcast, but we'll transition over to Syracuse women's lacrosse. A huge win on Saturday against Maryland. It was a doubleheader actually down in College Park, not on the same field, but back-to-back time-wise. The women's lacrosse field is right outside the football stadium, and Syracuse women's lacrosse got a 15-9 win over number 7 Maryland. Huge W for them, and they also got a win against Cornell, 18-10. What's been impressed you the most in the recent and the first 3 games of the season, AJ?
I'm really impressed. The Maryland game, I didn't think they were going to win, but I've really just been impressed by the offense. I thought maybe it would take kind of a little bit while for that offense to get rolling. But they haven't skipped a beat. Now, the players that are supposed to be performing are. Emma Ward scoring in every game, so too is Olivia Adamson. That's exactly what this Syracuse team needs, is those veteran players to continue to step up and deliver, and they have so far. And another huge test against UNC, but the way they played against Maryland, I wouldn't count them out against the Tar Heels.
I totally agree, AJ. This offense so dynamic. When you have Olivia Adamson and Emma Ward averaging like close to 6 points a game, that's just going to be unstoppable. And then it's just the depth offensively for this team. Emma Muchnick, she's an experienced player. She knows how to score goals. But then Caroline Trinkus, a freshman. Gracie Britton, a junior who hasn't gotten much minutes. Mylena Cotter's a freshman. Molly Guzik's a freshman. There's so many freshmen that are competing with and playing to the level of the upperclassmen. That's what you want to see if you're Kayla Trainer's squad. And the goalkeeping. Daniela Gayette's been fantastic in net. There were a lot of questions. This team had so many questions going into it. How do you replace the All-American level players that you had to? And Daniela Gayette in net just had a career high in saves again. After she had it in the Maryland game, she backed that up against Cornell. And so Syracuse has just been on a roll. Going on the road and beating Maryland, a top 10 team, that's impressive. That's really impressive. And so this will be a good test down in North Carolina. One of the fun things about this game is UNC at the basketball game yesterday, their president came out and announced there was no classes because they got over a foot of snow. And so, hey,
Syracuse, they didn't get over a foot of snow. They got 3 inches of snow.
3 inches of snow? Really? Are you sure?
That cancels class in North Carolina.
No. I agree. All right,
we should have a week off. We should have a week off.
Anyway, they got some snow down there, and it's just like, okay, Dorrance Field, new conditions. It's gonna be a little slippery on Saturday, and so maybe Syracuse. I know Syracuse plays in the dome, but Syracuse players probably a little more used to the cold winter conditions that are now creeping towards North Carolina. So that'll be another factor. It's also an 11 a.m. game. Which team is more prepared for that? It's always going to be slow starts for those early morning games. So a lot of different factors for Syracuse, and for a team that's been on a roll 3-0 to start the season, good signs.
I'm very intrigued by this matchup. North Carolina is a really good team. Like you mentioned, the weather. And I've been to Dorrance Field. What will Dorrance Field look like? It's a beautiful field, but it might be a little bit messy with that snow. And North Carolina is really good. Like I said, the number 1 overall recruit in the country, Chloe Humphrey, 15 points already. Her sister, who's a senior, 15 points. Ashley Humphrey. Kate Levy was the number 3 overall recruit. She's got 7 points. Kylie Matisse, I think it's how you pronounce her name, 8 points from Downingtown, PA, near AJ. They got a lot of players, number 2 in the country. And then also, by the next time we talk on this podcast, the women's lacrosse team playing number 2 North Carolina on Saturday, and then coming back home on Tuesday and playing number 3 Northwestern, who just lost to number 1 BC on the road. Or I think it was at home. But 2 really great games in the next couple days for Syracuse women's lacrosse will really get to kind of understand what they're made of. And like you said, both AJ and Griffin, the balance on this team, and I've been really impressed by the goalie, Daniela Gayette. You never knew who and how good was somebody going to be after Delaney Schweitzer ended up leaving to Northwestern, so we'll see her back on Tuesday. How good they were going to be, but I've been very impressed with the goalie play and the balance. Emma Ward and Olivia Adamson are going to lead the way pretty much every game, and they should. But the balance on this team, I think, is something that we haven't seen in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of talent in the program, but the balance and the way they play as one unit, especially on offense, has been very impressive. It's been a long week on the Ostrom Avenue podcast. We have a lot of sports going on. It's crossover season. Basketball looks like it's going to end a little bit earlier into crossover season than in years past. Both teams not looking like they're going to make the NCAA tournament. Currently, Syracuse women's basketball losing 61-53. And Maddie Pott, Georgia Woolley missed a 2-pointer. Almost changed the score on me midway through that. But they're potentially going to lose to North Carolina. We got a lot to talk about on the Ostrom Avenue podcast coming up. Syracuse men's lacrosse taking on Harvard on Saturday at 1. McClure Remodeling countdown to face-off at 12:30. Double overtime going all the way up until 4:30 p.m. on Saturday. And then Syracuse men's basketball, they've got an off weekend. They got off until Wednesday against NC State. That's a 7 p.m. game inside the Dome. McClure Remodeling countdown to tip-off at 6:30. Double overtime all the way up until 11. Then it's a race to the finish line to see if not only the men's, but if the women's basketball team makes the ACC tournament. Of course, we're going to talk about that when that time comes. We got a lot of things going on in the Ostrom Avenue podcast. Hopefully get a guest next week. Things didn't work out with Harvard, but hopefully get a guest next week and keep talking Syracuse athletics every single week here on the Ostrom Avenue podcast.